A man was inside a prison cell in West Dublin on Thursday night. Before midnight, he was dead. The first reports say the man was in his 30s and had suffered a serious assault inside Wheatfield Prison. He was from West Dublin. He was serving a sentence connected to drug offenses and he was sharing his cell with another prisoner. But the public still does not know exactly what happened behind that locked door. The man's identity has not been released. Investigators have not confirmed what caused the confrontation. They have not announced a motive, and the public information released so far contains no announcement of an arrest or criminal charge. There are reports that a bladed weapon may have been involved. One report described what happened as a suspected knife attack. But that detail has not yet been officially established through the medical examination. For now, the confirmed story is both simple and disturbing. A man died following a serious assault inside a prison cell. And this happened only weeks after inspectors revealed that violence inside Wheatfield Prison had already reached deeply concerning levels. The incident happened late on Thursday, the 13th of August. According to the Irish Times, the man was assaulted shortly before midnight. He had been sharing a cell with another inmate at Wheatfield Prison, a medium security facility in Clontarkin. The Irish Prison Service later confirmed that there had been a death in custody. His family had already been informed by the time the first public statements were released. A family liaison officer was assigned to support them as the investigation began. For that family, the man is not an unnamed prisoner or not a number in an official report. He is someone they knew, someone they expected to see again. Now they are waiting for investigators to explain how he died in a place where almost every movement is meant to be controlled. Guards say they are investigating all the circumstances surrounding the death. A senior investigating officer has been assigned to the case. The Garda Technical Bureau has also been requested, meaning specialist investigators will assist with examining the scene and any possible forensic evidence. The coroner's office has been notified and a postmortem examination will be central to what happens next. That medical examination should establish how the man died and document the injuries he suffered. Its findings will help guards decide the formal direction of the investigation. Until those results are available, it would be wrong to present an unconfirmed report as the final answer. Some reports say investigators are examining whether a bladed weapon was used. That is being investigated. It has not yet been officially confirmed as the cause of the man's injuries or death. The difference matters especially during the first hours of a major investigation, when information can change quickly. But even without that detail, investigators already face an unusual situation. This assault did not take place on an open street, inside a private home, or somewhere with people constantly entering and leaving. It happened inside a prison. Wheatfield controls who enters, who leaves, and where prisoners are placed. Movements are recorded. Officers conduct checks. Security cameras cover parts of the facility, and cells are assigned by prison authorities. That controlled environment creates a clear trail for investigators to examine. They will need to establish when the man was last seen before the assault. They will need to determine when prison officers first became aware that something had happened. They will need to examine records showing who had access to the area and what movements were recorded around the cell. They will also need to establish whether anyone heard or saw anything that could explain how the incident began. One of the most important questions concerns the cell itself. Reports say the man was sharing it with another prisoner. That does not prove who was responsible for his death. No one should be publicly accused without evidence, an arrest, or a charge. But it means investigators will need to reconstruct everything that happened inside that cell during the period before the man died. Was there an argument? Was there any previous conflict? Had either prisoner raised concerns before Thursday night? Had anyone requested a transfer? Was there information suggesting that placing the two men together created a risk? None of those questions has been answered publicly. There is also the question of timing. The reported assault happened shortly before midnight, but the exact sequence of events has not been released. It is not known when the man was last checked, how quickly officers became aware of the incident, or what efforts were made to save him. Those details will matter. They will show whether this happened suddenly, whether there were warnings before the assault, and whether prison staff had any opportunity to intervene. Then there is the question of a possible weapon. If the postmortem confirms that a weapon was used, investigators will need to establish what it was and how it entered the cell. Irish prisons have faced continuing problems involving contraband. Drugs, mobile phones, and weapons can create serious risks for both prisoners and staff. But there is currently no confirmed evidence explaining whether contraband played a part in this specific death. That answer must come from the scene examination and the postmortem, not speculation. The timing of this death makes the case even more troubling. In July, the Office of the Inspector of Prisons published findings concerning conditions across Ireland's prison system. Wheatfield was specifically identified as a prison where the level of violence caused concern. During the 12-month period examined by inspectors, there were 95 recorded assaults involving prisoners attacking other prisoners. There were also 11 recorded assaults on prison staff. Those are not online rumors or anonymous accusations. They are recorded incidents cited by Ireland's prison watchdog. But one result from the inspection stands out above the others. Inspectors asked prisoners whether they felt safe inside Wheatfield. Only 29% said they did. That was 68 people out of the 235 prisoners who answered the question. Fewer than 1 in 3 reported feeling safe. That does not prove prison officials could have predicted the assault that happened on Thursday night. It does not establish that the man's death was caused by overcrowding, staff shortages, or any failure by prison management. There is no public evidence proving that connection. But the figures show that serious concerns about safety and violence existed before this man died. The same report also examined whether prisoners trusted the internal complaint system. The result was even lower. Only 4% of the prisoners who responded said they believed the complaint system worked well. That was just 9 people out of 209. Inspectors said people living in the older part of Wheatfield had very limited access to complaint forms and complaint boxes on their landings. That matters because a complaint system is one of the ways a prisoner can report intimidation, threats, or fears about personal safety. Again, there is no evidence that the man who died had submitted a complaint. There is no confirmed information showing that he asked for protection or requested a different cell. We simply do not know. But when confidence in the complaint system is so low, investigators and prison authorities need to examine whether prisoners have a practical way to warn staff when they believe they are in danger. The Watchdog's annual report also described a wider crisis across Irish prisons. When the report was released in July, it stated that Ireland had 5,817 people in prison. More than 500 people were sleeping on mattresses placed on cell floors, sometimes beside toilets without proper separation. The chief inspector described the conditions across the prison system as a national disgrace. The report said 31 people died in custody during 2024. That figure dropped to 14 during 2025. But another 8 deaths had already been recorded during the first 3 months of 2026. Not every death in custody involves violence or criminal activity. Prisoners can die from illness, natural causes, self-harm, drug use, or other medical emergencies. Each case has its own circumstances, but every death must be examined because the state has responsibility for people held in its custody. A prisoner cannot choose to leave an unsafe cell. He cannot simply walk away from a threat. He depends on the prison system to assess risks, control weapons, monitor behavior, and respond when danger appears. That is why a death inside a shared cell creates questions that extend beyond the actions of any individual prisoner. The investigation must establish what happened, but an independent examination must also determine whether the system worked as it was supposed to work. Ireland has faced this kind of painful question before. In 2006, a young prisoner named Gary Juge was killed inside Mountjoy Prison. Years later, an official investigation concluded that his death was avoidable and should not have happened. That report identified failures in how risks were managed before Gary was placed in the cell where he died. There is no evidence that the Wheatfield case involved the same failures. The two cases must not be treated as identical. But the history shows why investigators cannot stop after identifying the person who carried out an assault. They must also examine how the circumstances were allowed to develop inside a controlled institution. In the Wheatfield case, several major facts remain unknown. The man has not been publicly named. The official cause of death has not been released. The use of a weapon has not been medically confirmed. No motive has been announced. No public statement has explained whether the men sharing the cell had previously come into conflict. And no one has been publicly charged in connection with the death. Those gaps are not an invitation to create theories. They are the exact questions the investigation must answer. The postmortem will be the first major turning point. If it confirms that the death resulted from injuries deliberately caused by another person, Gards will have the medical evidence needed to move the case forward as a suspected unlawful killing. Investigators can then compare those findings with the condition of the cell, prison records, witness accounts, and any available security footage. They will need to build a precise timeline. They will need to establish what happened before the assault, what happened during it, and what happened in the minutes afterward. The prison service will also face its own examination. It will need to explain how cell-sharing decisions were made, whether risk assessments had been completed, and whether staff had received any warning about tension between the prisoners. It will need to determine whether the cell was checked correctly and whether officers responded according to prison procedures. The Inspector of Prisons is responsible for independently examining deaths in custody. That investigation should look beyond criminal responsibility and examine whether lessons can be learned. For the man's family, however, official procedures will not change what happened. They are now waiting for a name to replace the words being used in early news reports. A man in his 30s. A prisoner from West Dublin. A person serving a sentence connected to drugs. Those details describe his legal situation, but they do not describe his life. His family knew more than the offense that brought him to prison. They knew who he was before Thursday night. Whatever crime a person committed, a prison sentence is not permission for that person to be attacked or killed. The state still has a duty to protect people in custody. That duty is at the center of this case. A man died after an assault in a shared cell. The official cause remains under investigation. The person responsible has not been established publicly. But the warnings about violence inside Wheatfield were already there. 95 recorded prisoner-on-prisoner assaults. Only 29% of surveyed prisoners saying they felt safe. Only 4% saying they trusted the complaint system. Those figures cannot tell us exactly what happened inside the cell. But they explain why this death cannot be treated as one isolated headline and then forgotten. The investigation must answer who caused the man's death. The prison system must answer a different question. Was there anything that could have been done to prevent it? active investigators, do you believe the death should lead to an immediate independent review of violence, cell sharing, and prisoner safety inside Wheatfield Prison?